How's it going, everyone? It is Prashan here, and I have Tucker with me. How's it going, Tucker?
Hey, yo, as always, we are here. We are ready. Let's win the weekend. Let's all hit infinite. And Surtur's OP.
Very OP. 3-5 after you play a card with 10 plus power. It gains plus 3 power. You would think that this is a niche card, and there's only certain cards that goes with this, but it still wins no matter what. It's so good. Especially with like Zabu discounting all like the new Zabu is freaking perfect. I'm pretty sure Zabu is gonna get nerfed again because Second Dinner likes to nerf cards around the card that's actually the problem, and they're not gonna nerf this. So Zabu might die soon. But we do have a deck here made by yours truly over here that's popping off. So I'll have the man of the hour talk about his Surtur deck. So let's go right into it.
So everyone else is playing just Scar shenanigans. I'm dropping 10 power, you're dropping 10 power. With this right here, you're able to kind of offset that. You're losing priority. And what's really cool about Surtur as well is why it's a little bit less niche than we thought, is after on reveals happen and a card gets a 10 power, Surtur then gets the buff. And so this right here is very reminiscent of just a list Derek was running last season, but was using Gwenpool instead of Surtur. But we're using Surtur in this list in order to get some extra power on the board. And if your opponent just sees a Surtur down, they're like, oh, they're just going to be playing 10 power cards. I can do everything to beat this. But you're dropping so many different 1-drops too that have a variety of 5 power to even more power depending on what Sunspot gets to. You have Wasp to be able to throw onto the board, onto your Hope Summers as well. If you don't have, your Moon Girl to be able to float and get free She-Hulks. Just the power output your opponent has to calculate is very just crazy because they don't necessarily know what you duplicated. And that's the real reason you're stealing cubes. And of course, in the comments, you're going to say, what if I don't have Hydra Bob because I didn't open for Hydra Bob? Well, we're going to give you the rundown right here. You could use Silver Sable, Ant-Man, or you can also use Rocket Raccoon. I would probably, if you don't have Sable, I would probably just go Ant-Man. Ant-Man's the best because you're going to get that guaranteed +4 power just by filling a lane, opposed to having to hit a card with Rocket. But you also have the tech, is what I'm saying in this list, like with Shadow King. Shadow King really can steal games. And this list just feels really good. Monkey's in a great spot. Yes, Eliath does exist, but they can't Eliath every lane, and like a lot of the decks that are running Eliath right now are playing Eliath on 5. You're floating turn 5, so you're dodging that.
Yeah, this is a pretty good list. I stole some cubes with this too, like by just slamming a bunch of cards down on the final turn. I guess that's why it's called Surtur Slam. And yeah, it's pretty good. Like it's cool to see Moon Girl get some love. That's a card that is lost a lot in Marvel Snap. So it's cool to play Moon Girl, the old school Moon Girl She-Hulk combo. Like one of the first combos you learn, I guess, as a beginner player in Snap or playing Snap in the beginning in general. So I really like this deck and the synergies it brings. And we have nothing but another Surtur deck we'll go into. I think this is like the week of Surtur. So we'll go over some Surtur decks and then some anti-Surtur decks. So let's check out the next one that we have. And this is technically the number 1 deck with a 68.2 win rate. This is freaking insane. So Hood, Nico, Zabu, Armor, Shadow King, Cosmo, Surtur, Atuma, Crossbones, Cole, Typhoid Mary, Scar. Like, jeez, like if you played Zabu turn 1 and then you profit from Atuma, Crossbones, Cole, Typhoid being in your deck, like that's almost a snap. And the fact that you can protect your cards with Cosmo and Armor, that is like so much. And then the flexibility with Nico, like she's the Swiss Army knife, I say, in every deck. She could change a location. She could turn that Zabu into a demon or that Hood into a demon. Like you have so much flexibility. I think this deck evolved a little bit by adding Hood and Nico. Before there's like it was 0 instead. I was playing 0 in the beginning just to shut off the Typhoid Mary or the Tuma. But I guess that way you have more flexibility to play your Cole. That way you're not stuck with a Cole in your hand, which is pretty good. And plus, with the Demon too, you're able to overpower a lane. That way you can play your Crossbones. So I totally understand the hood.
Yeah, no, like literally, like Brashan said, you can turn one snap with this deck if you have Zabu and Scar in your hand, because literally you're just gonna profit the rest of the game. The output, like I was saying earlier, it's kind of hard to calculate, and like it's really interesting. Like even if you don't have armor and Cosmo down, there are very few people actually running Shang-Chi right now. It feels like it's very interesting. Everyone is playing a bunch of big power, but I'm wondering if people just are at the mindset, I can't Shang-Chi every lane. Why do I want to run this? Let me run like a US agent or some affliction stuff instead. Spoiler alert for later. But this list is boring, like, because it is, you're just dropping raw power, but it's so good. It's to the point. It's like, how can someone actually scale me the way they do? And there's not a lot of decks that can output the same amount of power. I would have said Destroy can output the same, but you have the counters for Destroy. You have the Cosmo. You have the armor. You have the Shadow King. If you get 10 drops on the board, your Scar is free. And to be able to just get 10 drops on the board, you play Surtur on turn 3, and then you play a 10 power card turn 4, 10 power card turn 5, you get a free Scar. You literally just have to play the game to profit, and that's like why this deck is so good. And of course, like Brashan said too, you have the Nico. So like if you have end of the game, you can do Nico with some of these other low cost cards to be able to get some extra value too. Like, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, like I tried playing Destroy, it did not work.
No.
And the fact was, like, I played X23L1. I knew, I had a feeling they were gonna play like this deck, so I played Deadpool in another lane, and then they just played Cosmo in the other lane, and then I tried to play in the third lane, but they just played Juggernaut, and it was over. So there was another variation of this deck with Juggernaut in it, and it is very scary. So let's talk about some of the counter decks that are against Surtur right now, and we have this Toxic Sera list. 61% win rate, which is pretty good. I think anytime it sees Surtur, it wins. Of course, you have Hazmat, Shadow King, US Agent to take down those 4 or higher cost cards. Of course, Rogue. Rogue is just some solid tech. I think this could be flexed in. And then, of course, we have Killmonger, Luke Cage, Red Guardian. As soon as you see that Surtur, like Red Guardian, that Surtur, and it is over. And then Ghost, just to profit from being not having priority. That way you could do what you need to do. I probably would take out Rogue and put in Shang-Chi, or take out Anti-Venom for Shang-Chi in this deck, just so you could like just take down the meta, especially if you're climbing for Infinite. And then, of course, we have Anti-Venom, which is, I think, pretty good in Affliction decks in general, because you do have Luke Cage, you do have Shadow King, and then Sera too. I think the Sera and Ghost combo, you could go crazy at the end and just do whatever you want.
Yeah, I think I love the Anti-Venom in here, especially for that just like surprise factor. This list, like, you can tempo US Agent onto some of these lanes to literally offset Scar power, because if they don't have 10 power, they don't get the buff. Also, if they don't have 10 power when they're played on the board, they also don't proc these Surtur, and like Prashant said too, like, they're playing Surtur on their own lane. So like you literally can just Red Guardian that, and then of course you have your Rogue to be able to do final turn things. Like if you're facing more of like, let's say you are facing my Surtur Slam list, if you play your Ghost on tempo, you just Killmonger at the end of the game. Like you literally just wipe the entire board. And a lot of people are still playing these lighter to mid-range and bounce decks. So like there's a bunch of different options and outputs, and like you don't even have to have Ajax to be able to drop a lot of power in this list, which is really cool.
Yeah, and I would say if you don't have US Agent, just play Scorpion. Scorpion could do the same thing, and it's like a cheap card that everyone has for the most part. And next here, we do have some Sera Surfer. Surfer has not gone away. I think the Toxic Surfer list is still one of the top decks in the game. I just think like anytime, and this one doesn't have magic. Another Surfer deck without magic, you're relying on Sera to win games, and of course you have Brood. Absorbing Man could do things with the Brood, with Silver Surfer. You have Copycat just to get some intel on what they're doing early in the game. Agent Venom, I think every card in this deck is positively affected, except for Copycat, you just lose one, but that's totally fine. But overall, still solid list. You still have some counters in here. You have Killmonger, you have Rogue to play against some of these decks out here.
And you're adding Iron Man to this list, so let's say you do just low roll and you don't get the Surfer stuff. You can just double your power with Iron Man in one lane, which is something people are not expecting in Surfer until you guys play this list. The cat just goes crazy below me. Okay. But no, I think this list is really solid. There's so many different ways to output power. People are playing a lot of Airshim right now too, so you get some immediate Cassandra Nova value. And like I said, like you're playing, or like you saw the Rogue list, like we saw last time. I mean, you can just snipe a Luke Cage, and Luke Cage will save you from any of the other affliction your opponents are doing, because that's still a very popular card. Or you can snipe some Mobiuses, or you can run Mobius in that spot. Like Surfer is just the tech hub for anything, and I think it's cool just to see Sera get action again.
Yeah, and then Cassandra Nova too. If you're playing against a Surtur deck, you play Cassandra on curve. All their 10s are now 9s, and Surtur gets no more value. And speaking of Mobius, there's a fun deck here from W Drac Dump. I've been playing with this a lot, and you can get some surprising wins at the end, and you can make people retreat just off of the Mobius play too. Like Scar doesn't have value anymore. You kill bounce decks, destroy, they can't play their death. There's so much that you could do here. And then like Gwenpool too. Like I typically try to play Psylocke on 2, and I'll play like Gwenpool or 3, or I'll play Dracula on 3. And like it, and the fact like Strong Guy too. Like Strong Guy I feel like is an underrated card. And then Black Swan too. Ever since she's an activate, she's been great too. But I've actually forgot to activate her a few times. So make sure that you activate Black Swan, and you could just dump your whole deck on the board. Sunspot, Ant-Man, Rocket, Hydra Bob. You could leave She-Hulk or Infinite in your hand still, and then Dracula's going to hit it, and you're just going to take over and win games.
Yeah, it's pretty much like an inverse of like the Surtur Slam, but it's more of like the Dracula shenanigans, which I actually like. So like you have Mobius to counter the mirror matches, and then what you do is like you play Psylocke Black Swan on 4, and you float turn 5, so you can get a free She-Hulk and potentially play Infinite too. You're activating on turn 5 as well, like Pershawn said, so you can drop your 1-drops. Your Sunspot gets big. You could also just Gwenpool on 4s, and your opponent has to predict what cards got hit with the Gwenpool. There's just so many different outs to this list that makes it really dynamic.
Yeah, this is so good. And then next, we have Bounce. Bounce has not gone anywhere at all, especially with this list too. Shadow King definitely has tons of profit. You could play Beast. You can even Beast the Shadow King and do it twice if you need to, like, which is filthy. And then another Black Swan deck where you could just dump your hand at the end of the game, and then Bishop and Hit Monkey can go crazy. And then Agent Venom, probably one of the best season pass cards. I hope it doesn't get nerfed, but every card in this deck profits from it. So for Beast, you only lose 1 power, but you're just using them for the bounce for the most part.
Yeah, this list is just, bread and butter. It's the right home for Toxin. It's like what everyone would be playing with it. And like you can dodge priority, which is also just really good with this list. Just having maybe just Bishop on the board, or even sometimes just Beast. And the value is just there. Having the tech for the mirror matchups, because not everyone is running Shadow King in bounce right now, is really solid, because people are still scaling. You sometimes can output the same amount of power as some of these Surtur lists too, depending on the way they've spread out their board, which is really nice. And then of course, like we're saying with the Shadow King, you do that to reset Surtur. Maybe you do bounce it again, just so like the Scar value is diminished. But this shell is really nice.
Yeah, really good. Bounce has not gone anywhere. And I think that's it for this week. I think we do have another Sera Tech deck here. I think we talked about this last week, but you could definitely counter some Surtur with this deck, especially with US Agent, Shadow King. You have Invisible Woman for some end of game shenanigans. Red Guardian, what we talked about earlier, just sniping that Surtur to kill that power from the board. And then Sera, again, to do a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. The Sera, like, Mobius isn't real unless you're playing W's deck, which, I mean, if you guys want to counter literally all these other decks that we are pretty much showcasing today, you just play W's deck and it runs Mobius and you just win.
Yeah, for the most part. And then that is it for this video. Make sure you like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. I'll have Tucker's info down below as well. Make sure you subscribe to his stuff, because he's going to be charging me pretty soon for being here. So yeah, you have anything for the people, Tuck?
It's only the first week of the new Snap season, so if you guys haven't hit Infinite already, totally cool. We do have a new card coming out next week. I don't think we're gonna have a Decks of the Week video next week because Vershawn's gonna be partying it up, which good for him. But Malekith is really gonna surprise you guys. So if you guys are missing any of the cards that week, I think it's definitely an open week, and it's gonna be a card to build around, and it is gonna be prominent. If it's not this season, it'll be prominent in the future.
Yeah. And well, I don't know. Maybe we'll do one like a day early or something.
I'm down for a day early. We'll see, because the OTA, we have a patch and an OTA next week. Still